Imagine the federal government wrongly accused you of committing a serious felony, and prosecutors brought your case to a grand jury, and the grand jury, seeing through that case, rejects it and refuses to return an indictment. And rather than give up, federal prosecutors take the case again to a grand jury, which again rejects the case and refuses to return an indictment, instead returning a no true bill. And imagine that after the third time that a grand jury rejected the case, refusing to bring forward an indictment, rather than giving up the ghost, the federal government decides to charge the case themselves as a misdemeanor, so they don't need to deal with the grand jury any longer. And once that misdemeanor case goes to a trial jury, the case collapses, ending in your acquittal. What I'm describing right now is the case of Sidney Reid, who was wrongly accused of assaulting law enforcement back in July and was finally cleared of all charges earlier this month. Very lucky to have Sidney Reid here to share her story and break her silence exclusively here on All Rise News on Legal AF, part of the Midas Touch Network. Take a moment before our interview to hit subscribe, and you don't want to miss what's coming ahead. Thank you, Sidney Reid, for joining us and telling us your story for the first time since your acquittal earlier this month. I want to start at the beginning, the night in July when you saw these concerning immigration arrests in Washington, D.C. around the time of the troop deployment. Tell us what went down that evening.
Yeah, so I was just hanging out with some friends, and one of them got a text message saying that ICE was going to be taking people to some detention centers. And we just kind of wanted to see what was going on. And we went, and there was, probably about like 10 FBI agents and so forth there. So we were just kind of wanted to see what was happening. And actually, it was pretty insane because there was only 2 men being taken out, and there was so much force there that we saw it as kind of, intimidation, I guess. And one of the guys, actually, he looked like he was maybe just turned 18 years old. And it just seemed really kind of scary to us, and a little bit of, flexing of power at this point for 2 small men, one of them who looked like he was barely, an adult, being taken away. And so I felt, with everything going on and just the constant media or doom scrolling or what have you, it just seemed like taking the video to at least help the families figure out where they were going. It doesn't matter what you did, your families deserve to know where you go. And I think that was the main reason why I was out there and wanted to take video.
And of course, it's your right to take video, and it's a lot of people for civic duty. They go out and see what the government is up to. What happened next? How did the agents react to you taking video of this encounter?
Well, they were not too pleased at first. They were taking video back of me, kind of making some, off-color jokes a little bit. Again, and that's also their right as well. But
if I may ask, what were the jokes?
It was just kind of, I don't really necessarily remember, but, it was just kind of like, I get to video you if you're videoing me. And it's like, well, of course you do, and right. It was just kind of like, I guess trying to throw my rights back in my face in a way. It was just kind of seemed a little bit childish. Yeah, it was when I was walking around, because one of the men put his hand in front of my face, and I actually had no idea that he was an ICE agent because he didn't have a badge on his chest. He was in plain clothes, and he just kind of looked like a guy that wanted to see what was going on. And then so I walked around to the other side of the jail, the front entrance. And that's when he started to grab me and try and get the phone out of my hand.
Now, that must have been scary. You just said that you didn't even realize at the time because he was plain clothes. Very often you see masked agents going around and you hear people say, I had no idea this guy was law enforcement. What's going through your mind as he's approaching you?
Honestly, the first thing I thought of was Rittenhouse, like during the whole Black Lives Matter things. Like I just kind of saw someone maybe taking what they saw as their patriotic duty, maybe a little bit too like serious or overstepping bounds. Like I just kind of thought this was a guy just, um, just trying to touch me, some strange man touching me, trying to take my property. And I had no idea what his involvement in any of this was. So it didn't really make sense to me why he was approaching me in this manner.
That sounds terrifying. When did you figure out what was going on, that you were being arrested?
Well, it was, it wasn't, I didn't really realize I was being arrested until a third person came up and started cursing at me and threw me up against a wall and told me if I just minded my business, none of this would be happening.
And so flash forward a little bit, you find out that the government is trying to prosecute you. When did you learn that a grand jury rejected an indictment in your case?
I didn't learn that until my very first hearing, which was maybe 25 days after the arrest. Actually, that morning, I met with my public defender, Teresa Abe, who's fantastic. And they told her, the prosecutors told her that morning that they were going to dismiss, that at the hearing, everything was going to be dismissed. And then right before the hearing, they let her know that they found more evidence and that they were going to be pushing forward. At this point, the public defender's office still had zero evidence from the government. And when we were standing outside the courtroom door to go in, about 5 prosecutors, including 3 of their supervisors in that office, were there for the hearing to bring charges against me formally.
And these were very serious charges that they wanted to bring against you. Was it impeding, assaulting, or disrupting law enforcement? A serious felony that could have been a lot of sentencing exposure. Was this? What was your experience when you learned about that, and that you learned that 3 separate grand juries rejected that case?
I was, I was honestly dumbfounded. I was dumbfounded in the jail when I first met my attorney, Teresa Abe, when I was detained for 2 days without a phone call. And when she told me that the government was seeking to send me to prison for 8 years, and then come to find out that 3 grand juries, refused had a no bill. The saying goes, you can indict a ham sandwich like this. I was speechless at the fact that the government would try so ruthlessly to come after someone just exercising their right, and a right that I was exercising to, try to speak for people that don't have voices anymore in this country. And I don't know. It was just, I was just dumbfounded. I was speechless, and I was scared. I was very scared because everything seemed so baseless, and they didn't care. They didn't care one way or another. It seemed like they were just out to get me.
And speaking as a legal journalist, I've covered the courts for nearly 2 decades. I haven't heard before your case of a case where the government has tried unsuccessfully to indict someone 3 times straight and then brought down the charge to a misdemeanor so they could charge it themselves. What was your reaction to that decision, learning that they would having the case rejected 3 times, try to bring it anyway as a misdemeanor?
It obviously the sigh of relief because, not having a felony charge is great. But at the same time, like, it's still facing some charges. It doesn't have that tagline of, like, every time I apply for a job or whatever, I have to, like, declare myself as a felon. So that was a sigh of relief. But at the same time, I didn't understand, like, why my actions were being so targeted and why they were so wrong, that the government is wasting millions of dollars, like, to prosecute me. I don't know how much every trial costs, but I can't imagine that they're cheap. And something as, basic as just trying to give a voice to someone who's being stolen out of this country, I don't see, the magnitude of what they were making it out to be.
And let's talk about some of the stuff that you've learned en route to trial. As I understand it, there was surveillance footage that the government did claim that they didn't have, that you obtained toward the very end of discovery before a trial. You obtained text messages that showed your arresting officer describing the injuries, downplaying the injuries as a boo-boo, and denigrating you, calling you a libtard, I think one of the text messages said. What was your reaction to seeing that federal law enforcement was talking that way about the people they're supposed to serve? What is the most surprising discovery that you learned on the route to trial in terms of the evidence that your team collected?
The text messages didn't surprise me that much, just because of how I was being spoken to while I was in the car with the ICE agents. And, there was this whole reason why I first got arrested, because I jerked my knee up, and the FBI agent, Agent Bates, considered that assault. And so then, the arrest happened. I feel like they felt it was a little bit flimsy. And then Bates comes and shows that she has a scratch on her hand because of me getting slammed up against this brick wall. And, I heard one of the agents saying, like, "We got her now," or something to that effect. And, it's like, I felt everything was a very strong reach, but how it could be played was always in the back of my mind, that, this isn't going to bode well for me. But so I would say that nothing was super surprising. The biggest surprises came probably during the trial, where I felt like my attorneys were flabbergasted just as much as I am by the lack of evidence that they had, or just the downright lies that the FBI agent, the ICE agent, told to the grand jury, and which came out during trial. But then also the omitted evidence from the FBI agent, who was their only witness. And then also the fact that the whole operation was in direct violation of DC law, them being there, because they were getting information from someone working inside the jail. And they can't do that. And so the whole reason why any of this happened is because those 8 people, those 8 government employees that are supposed to protect and defend us, they were there illegally to begin with. So I think that was the most surprising thing that came out during the trial. But beforehand, I was just kind of ready for any nonsense that they were bringing up against me.
And as I understand from some of the reporting, your attorneys tried to get surveillance footage from the area in your defense. And then right before trial, they suddenly found the video. What was that like?
The fact that they found this surveillance video after the DC jail told them that out of however many cameras that they had, only 2 angles were working. We were all pretty shocked. And the fact that the prosecutors thought that the day of the trial would be a good day to introduce more evidence, I really can't explain the feeling. They had 3 months to bring up their best case against me, and they couldn't even do their job. And I don't know who's to blame, but it just seemed really, again, like, really backdoor, just kind of reasoning and just trying their best to be shady. And it makes me really sad because, I love this country, but our government is really scary when it wants to be. And I think this trial kind of proved that.
Seeing 3 grand juries reject the evidence, being acquitted by a trial jury, does this entire process make you have more or less trust in the system? On the one hand, you have been through all this, but on the other hand, these checks and balances worked.
I do believe that being a resident of DC, being someone born in DC, no matter what was thrown at me, I did feel confident that 12 of my peers in this city, in our nation's capital, would find me not guilty. Now, that's not to say that, this is a heavily Democratic city, but at the same time, like, I don't feel that the evidence was strong enough to, no matter where I was, like, I would hope that I would get the exact same acquittal, but unfortunately, that might not be the case in other areas. So I feel like in larger cities, this would be a good case to show the checks and balances, but maybe not so much in other parts of the country.
It's interesting you mentioned that. We've seen some folks try to discredit the acquittal against you, the fact that 3 grand juries rejected the case, saying, oh, it's a Democratic city. Do you think that you've seen this experience up close and personal? You've seen what the testimony was. And as you said, this was a jury of your peers, the people who saw the evidence. Do you think that the fact that this process played out as it did, the people who are trying to discredit the case by discrediting the jury, what's your message to them?
I would say that, looking at the jury, it did kind of startle me. Just the fact that there was, and I'm sure I'm going to get some flack for this, but there was 8 white men on the jury. And I feel like that is not necessarily a good representation of DC. Like, DC is home to a lot of different people of all different races. And so it's like that kind of like startled me at the beginning, not because I was thinking that white men wouldn't, be on my side or understand the facts. It's just that seemed a little like one-sided to me. But like, there was a lot of lawyers that were jurors. There was, I believe one guy, actually a lot of the people were government employees, like in the Department of Defense and other places where you would think that, they're probably Republican or they're conservative or what have you, and they might not agree with the things that I was doing, but they still found me not guilty. People that I didn't see as the typical DC Democratic citizen, these were the people's. Like, I really do believe, like, it was 4 to 5 lawyers were on the jury. So if they understood the assignment and they saw the baselessness of the charges, then I do feel like I was acquitted, because I didn't do anything wrong.
Do you think that the government invested so many resources in this case and kept trying to bring it because they were trying to intimidate folks from exercising their right to, for example, photograph and videotape law enforcement? And if so, has this given you some pause before protesting or videotaping again? Is that intimidation working?
I absolutely believe that this was intimidation. Like I said, one of the agents told me repeatedly, and I even have it on my phone. My phone kept on recording audio when they put it in my backpack to take me to whatever holding cell they were taking me. And the agent repeatedly told me, if I just minded my business, I'd be at home right now. Mm. So it is 100% their tactic. And, the fact that it was, a dog with a bone, they wouldn't let this go. And so many other cases have been thrown out about people speaking out up against this administration, but mine apparently was not thrown out because it involved ICE agents, because they want to give ICE agents legitimacy. And I feel like the only way that they can do this is by showing like the heaviest hand will come down on you if you go against what they're doing. It's the only time that this ordeal that I've been going through has given me pause was actually when I was going to one of my hearings. I guess National Guard was just deployed. So there was a lot of people protesting outside the courtroom. And I'm walking to my hearing, and of course I join in and I'm chanting with everyone. And, but in the back of my head, I could just hear my lawyer saying, stay out of trouble until this is all over. So I have been, as they said, just kind of staying in the shadows. But now that it's over, like 100%, I'm part of my Free DC local branch here in Cleveland Park where I live. And I plan on being at every rally I possibly can be at. And, this only gives me fire to speak louder and stronger.
And big picture question, Jeanine Pirro, the U.S. Attorney for D.C., has brought a number of cases, at least 8, where the grand jury has refused to indict. What is your message to Jeanine Pirro about these tactics that you identify as intimidation for people exercising their rights?
I just feel like, in Trump's own administration, he's been wanting to cut the waste and, make this government more efficient. Cut her. She's wasting so many resources, so much tax dollars. And, this is a great city, but it could use a lot of work. And, what she's doing is kind of just wasting everyone's time. If there are any serious charges to be brought up against anyone, 100% go for it. But these are minor infractions. These are nonviolent things that she's trying to prosecute for. And for what? It's just to quiet people that, don't feel the same way that she does or Trump does. And I think that's really ridiculous in our nation's capital to try and silence democracy.
Thank you so much, Sidney Reid, for your bravery in speaking out publicly after everything you've experienced and doing it on this show. For folks who've been watching, to find more reporting like this, visit www.allrisenews.com. And to watch videos like this, hit subscribe on the Legal AF channel right now, and we'll see you next time.
Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.